Tonight at 10, France warns Britain not to seek too many concessions during negotiations to leave the EU. Theresa May is attending her first EU summit as Prime Minister, an opportunity to meet and address the leaders of the 27 other member states. Despite a warning from France that the UK could not expect any favours, Theresa May tried to strike a reassuring note.
The UK is leaving the EU, but we will continue to play a full role until we leave, and we'll be a strong and dependable partner after we've left.
We'll have the latest from the summit, where Theresa May has been addressing fellow leaders over dinner this evening. Also tonight, in the final televised debate of the US presidential campaign, Donald Trump alleged once again that the election was rigged. Iraqi forces say they're making progress towards Mosul, the last major stronghold of so-called Islamic State in Iraq. The House of Commons has called for the former boss of BHS, Sir Philip Green, to be stripped of his knighthood. And following Alan Turing, a pardon for thousands of other gay and bisexual men convicted of sexual offences under laws which are no longer in force.
In the south, recovering from the anorexia triggered by a former dance teacher who said she had thunder thighs. And a blow for Saints fans who travelled to Milan for one of their biggest ever European matches.
Good evening. Theresa May is in Brussels for her first European summit since becoming Prime Minister. The 28 EU leaders are having dinner tonight, during which the Prime Minister is expected to update them on the current state of the UK's plans for leaving the European Union. During the day, President Hollande, in effect, warned Mrs May not to expect any favours during the Brexit talks, while she insisted the UK would remain a strong and dependable partner for the EU after its departure. Our political editor, Laura Kuensberg, is in Brussels with the latest tonight.
Hugh, this is such a cauldron of competing demands and ambitions without any detail from the UK of what they really want the future to look like. But the Prime Minister has tonight tried to assert herself, warning the other 27 countries not to make decisions or have discussions about issues that affect the whole of the EU, including the UK, while we are still in, despite the seeming contradiction that we have decided we're on our way out. Is the first sign really in Brussels that Theresa May intends to be heard, whatever our decision was at the end of June. She wants the UK to still play a full role in the EU. She's demanding that she will not be frozen out right at the beginning of this relationship that will matter so much to her political success and, of course, to all of us.
She'll make this entrance many times. The black limousine with the blacked-out windows. A few short steps into the relationship that will shape her and our future.
Good afternoon. This is my first European Council, and I'm here with a very clear message. The UK is leaving the EU, but we will continue to play a full role until we leave, and we'll be a strong and dependable partner after we've left. It's in the interests of both the UK and the EU that we continue to work closely together, including at this summit.
The others promise not a lion's den, but a nest of doves. The Prime Minister doesn't look so sure. And whatever the UK's hopes, Europe is not ready to talk.
You can be sure she will be absolutely safe with us.
Is there any chance that EU leaders might talk informally before the trigger of Article 50?
No, absolutely not. We will not discuss about our future negotiations today.
Leader after leader, the message to Theresa May. Work out how you're leaving the club, and then we'll listen.
Wir warten auf den Antrag Großbritanniens. Es ist jetzt an.
We're waiting on the UK, she says. We don't have to get deeply involved yet.
Do you know what she wants? Do you know what she wants?
No negotiation without notification, and I hope that Theresa May will pass that message to us.
And a stinging Gallic shrug.
Madame Theresa May veut un Brexit dur.
If she wants hard Brexit, negotiations will be hard. Our decision to quit has done a lot more than raise eyebrows, but it's almost a footnote today. The main business, migration, trade, what to do about Russia. But Theresa May wants to use these moments to make new friends and firm up the old. to ease fears that we'll just crash out of the EU. Even if some are quietly crossing their fingers, we might in the end change our minds. It is deeply unlikely, but having voted to leave, some Europeans hope we might decide to stay.
Some of us are keeping that option at the back of our mind. But that can only happen if the British people or the British government reverses the decision that has been taken by the British people. It cannot be the Europeans who reverse that decision.
This isn't a day for detail, but a hugely important meet and greet. Whether she likes it or not, the biggest thing Theresa May will likely do is lead us out of the European Union. So ultimately, her success or failure as Prime Minister will be decided here in Brussels, not in Britain.
She takes her place in this lineup, believing she'll be the last British Prime Minister to do so. Yet in this political twilight zone, Theresa May wants to reassure. Our place in the EU's often been hard to find. But as the Prime Minister grapples her way towards the exit, it's more fraught and newly awkward. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Brussels.
So, as we said, the leaders are talking over dinner in Brussels tonight. Let's go straight to the conference centre, and Katya Adler, our Europe editor, is there. And Katya, after today's words and exchanges, what is your sense of where this summit is going for Theresa May?
Well, Hugh, we've got to have a look at this. Brexit in post-war Europe is one of the most dramatic developments, but it really is more of a process than a single event. And from now, really, until Downing Street launches those formal Brexit proceedings, we're kind of stuck in a holding pattern of screaming silences. EU leaders here are desperate to know from Theresa May the details of the kind of a Brexit deal that she really wants, but she's refusing to give that running commentary either at home or abroad. Whereas for their part, EU leaders will not enter into talks about trade deals, either interim or otherwise, until those formal Brexit talks start, even though Mrs May really wants to know where EU flexibility lies. So while both sides are sitting at dinner wanting to scream at each other, just tell me, in fact, all 28 leaders, including Mrs May, have been discussing Russia and Syria. As the Prime Minister herself pointed out tonight, as long as the UK remains in the EU, it does stay a full member. And we are an infinite number of negotiations, talks and arguments away from Britain walking out of the door just yet.
Katya, again, thanks very much. Katya Adler with the latest there at that summit in Brussels. Well, Donald Trump has confirmed that he will, after all, accept the final outcome of the presidential election, provided it's a clear result, as he put it. In the third and final televised debate of the campaign, the Republican candidate repeated that the election system, in his view, was rigged against him. His Democratic rival, Hillary Clinton, had accused him of denigrating American democracy. Our North America editor, John Sopel, reports now from Las Vegas.
No handshake, not even grudging respect. For 15 minutes, though, something novel. A detailed policy debate without insults. But when the subject turned to Russia, their hacking of Democratic Party computers, and Donald Trump's admiration for Vladimir Putin as a strong man, that all changed.
I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting
she has
myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you
17,
have no idea.
And so it went on. But then Donald Trump was questioned about the procession of women who've come forward to accuse him of sexual assault. He was dismissive.
These women, the woman on the plane, the woman, I think they want either fame or her campaign did it. And I think it's her campaign.
Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. He goes after their dignity, their self-worth, and I don't think there is a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like.
Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody. Nobody has more respect.
Please, everybody.
The moderator intervened because the audience was laughing. There were sharp exchanges on guns, abortion, immigration.
But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out.
And this on social security benefits.
My Social Security, payroll, contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
Then came the truly astonishing moment of this debate. Donald Trump's alleged in recent days that the election is being rigged. Both his daughter and his running mate have said they would of course accept the verdict of the American people. So would Mr. Trump.
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. She should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
In the spin room afterwards, his surrogates were scrambling to defend what he'd said. It hadn't been part of the script. So today, Mr. Trump in Ohio was trying to extinguish the fire that he himself had set with a joke: if I win this election, I'll accept the result. But he went on.
Of course, I would accept a clear election result, but I would also reserve my right to contest or file a legal challenge in the case of a questionable result. Right?
But as one blaze is damped down, another seems to catch. Today another woman has come forward to claim she was subject to unwanted sexual advances from Mr. Trump.
Perhaps you do not remember me or what you did to me so many years ago.
Last night his family, who are also his closest advisors, joined him on stage. He needed to win big in the final debate, but that stern face suggests he felt otherwise. John Sopel, BBC News, Las Vegas.
Well, the debate was the last chance for a mass television audience, tens of millions watching, to see both candidates debate the issues. The Republican polling expert Frank Luntz assembled a group of undecided voters in Las Vegas to watch that debate and to get their instant reaction to the exchanges. And our correspondent James Cook was there too.
If you lean towards Trump, turn your dial to 1. If you lean towards Clinton, turn your dial to 3.
They call this dialing the debate. Some 24 floating voters reacting to every sigh and every lie in real time.
Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where
The lines show approval ratings second by second, red for those leaning to Donald Trump, green for those inclined to Hillary Clinton, and yellow for the undecided voters. So what difference did the debate make?
Did it move any of you today? Did any of you move your vote today? How did you move?
I went from Trump to Clinton because Clinton proved to be more of an adult. Actually, I think she did better than Trump.
Who else moved?
From undecisive to Trump.
Tell me why.
Because she's been in office, with Obama. They've been there long enough, and not enough has gotten better over that period of time. So, in essence, he's saying you didn't do anything. So, I'll give a guy a shot that's going to do something.
But what of the most controversial moment, when the Republicans suggested yet again that the poll would be rigged?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time.
How many of you had a problem with Donald Trump saying that he would not affirm the election results? Raise your hands. What's the issue? Why do you have a problem?
I think because our country is built on a fair election, and when the results come in, yes, there can be evidence of voter fraud sometimes, but we have to trust that it's working the way it should and the results stand.
Why did what Trump said bother you?
Because it'll inspire disconnection from a lot of the population from the political process.
How many of you wish that there were two other candidates, that you would replace both of them? Raise your hands.
The pollster running this focus group is a horrified Republican who says both candidates are limping to the finish line.
If the rest of the world wanted to see America humbled, they got their wish. A broken system, broken candidates, and an electorate that is afraid, deeply afraid of the future.
After the final debate, this small slice of the American electorate remains pretty evenly divided between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But most of them are united on one thing: they don't like either of them. For millions of people in this country, this has been a depressing and destructive election. James Cook, BBC News, Las Vegas.
Well, let's go live to Las Vegas, and John Sopel is there, our North America editor. 18 days to go, John. We've now had the 3 televised debates. What is your sense tonight of the state of this race?
Well, Hillary Clinton very clearly left Las Vegas last night feeling very buoyant indeed. Her kind of team around her was celebrating a bit. There was apparently quite a few drinks taken on the plane going back to New York. And how this manifests itself is Hillary Clinton is expanding her ambitions. She's looking at Republican states like Utah, Arizona, Missouri as possible targets as they sense support for Donald Trump is crumbling. For Donald Trump, he needs to get his campaign on an even keel and get back to the issues that have served him well in the run-up to this presidential stage of the campaign. But he's coming under attack, and those comments last night about perhaps not accepting the result have brought fresh criticism from Barack Obama. But with 18 days to go, there is still a high degree of unpredictability. Hugh.
John, thanks once again. John Sopel there for us with the latest in Las Vegas after that debate. Now, the Iraqi Prime Minister says the operation to recapture the city of Mosul, the last major stronghold of so-called Islamic State in Iraq, is progressing faster than planned. IS controls a large area around the city of Mosul where some 1.5 million civilians are thought to be trapped. In the past 48 hours, Iraqi government forces have made significant gains to the south of the city. And today, their Kurdish Peshmerga allies began a major advance on 3 fronts to the north and to the east. Our correspondent Ola Gerin is with Kurdish forces attacking the town of Nawaran.
Singing of bravery on their way into battle. Kurdish Peshmerga fighters shoulder to shoulder, knowing dawn could bring them face to face with so-called Islamic State. And with first light, the Kurds began attacking IS positions here just 9 miles from Mosul. The militants replied with tracer fire. Then this. A threat from above. An IS drone was over our heads. The Peshmerga tried frantically to shoot it down. A drone, apparently rigged with explosives, killed 2 Kurdish fighters recently. This one got away. Then there were 2. One was brought to earth. But there was little time to celebrate. Suddenly, a warning. Get down, there's a sniper. As IS is pounded with heavy weapons, the Kurds listen in on their communications. Here they try to coordinate a counter-attack on the troops. Target them on the bridge, one commander says. Fire missiles from the petrol station. Then there's a plea for reinforcements. But IS couldn't muster any here, and the assault continued. Soon the extremists were losing ground. Well, we're entering an area that the Kurdish forces have just taken. They came in about half an hour or so. This village was an IS stronghold. Now, the further they go forward, the more resistance they expect to face from suicide bombers and from snipers. And we've heard some sniper fire just in the last few moments. We have to be very careful here. We have to stay on the asphalt. The troops believe that IS has spent months planting roadside bombs all around here. There will be many more hazards on the journey ahead. And Kurdish sources say IS is now regrouping in some areas. Orla Guerin, BBC News, now ran north of Mosul.
An American soldier was killed today in a bomb attack near Mosul. More than 100 US troops are advising Iraqi forces as they advance on the city. Lieutenant General Stephen Townsend, the American commander of coalition forces, is helping to coordinate operations from an airbase at Gayara. And he told our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale that defeating IS was not going to be easy.
The fight for Mosul's being led by Iraqi forces, but it's being done with America's help. Escorted by Apache gunships, we travelled with the most senior coalition commander in Iraq, Lieutenant General Stephen Townsend, now keeping a close eye on the battle. The BBC's the first media to be given this access since the offensive was launched. Our first stop, an austere base from where the US is supporting Iraqi and Peshmerga forces as they push towards the city.
So did you guys get to shoot yet? Yeah? Good.
Their artillery and these shells being used to target so-called Islamic State.
There's days where we're gonna, impose our will, and there's days the enemy gets a vote, and he's gonna come out on top. This is a big operation and in a long war. So when you pull back and look at it, here's what I see. I see the Iraqi security forces have largely encircled Mosul, and they are imposing their will on the enemy in Mosul now.
There are 5,000 US troops in Iraq, but not to directly join the fight. Nor, General Townsend tells me, is the offensive an American-imposed plan. But he is in close contact with Iraqi commanders. At his next meeting with Iraq's Chief of Defense Staff, he looks for reassurances that they have enough equipment and men. Defeating IS in Mosul won't be easy.
They're very adaptable, very creative, cunning. We've seen all kinds of examples of that. It's a challenging opponent. They burn people alive in cages, they crucify people, and they drive over people on the street with bulldozers. Are they using human shields in there? Yeah, they're probably using human shields in there. This is a brutal opponent that has to be stopped.
He won't be drawn on how long it'll take. But as we leave, with Mosul in the distance, any victory still looks like some way off. Jonathan Beale, BBC News.
The House of Commons has called for the former owner of British Home Stores, Sir Philip Green, to be stripped of his knighthood. The vote by MPs isn't binding, but it will add to the pressure for action to be taken. Sir Philip, who was knighted for services to retail a decade ago, sold BHS for £1 last year, shortly before it collapsed. He's accused MPs of misrepresenting the facts, as our business editor Simon Jack explains.
This Knight of the Realm has been described by many as more like an emperor, and today they came to bury him, and certainly not to praise him.
I see a Green as a billionaire spiff. A billionaire spiff who should never have received a knighthood. A billionaire spiff which has shamed British capitalism.
BHS is one of the biggest corporate scandals of modern times. I think the whole House has sympathy for the thousands of workers and pensions who've lost their jobs and seen their benefits reduced as a result of greed, incompetence and hubris.
Strip Philip Green of his knighthood, take him to task and maybe get him to sell a few of his super yachts so my constituents and everybody else's constituents can get the pensions and retirement they worked so hard for.
To be honest, this wasn't really much of a debate, and some MPs were uneasy.
To call for another committee to strip somebody of an honour when the normal process is that an honour is only taken away if somebody's committed a criminal offence is an abuse of the House of Commons.
Jean Costello from South Shields was one of 11,000 people who lost their jobs, and she was very clear about what should happen.
I think he should be stripped of his knighthood, 100%. He doesn't realise what he's done to everybody, and he's swanning around with a knighthood. It's not fair for what everybody else has gone through.
Today's motion does not mean that Sir Philip Green will lose his knighthood. Any decision on that will be made here in Whitehall. It's also very rare for people not found guilty of doing anything illegal to lose honours. Fred Goodwin of RBS fame is the last and possibly most famous example. But it seems Sir Philip has become the new poster boy for popular and political mistrust in business.
A household name.
During her party conference, Theresa May made a thinly disguised attack on him.
A director who takes out massive dividends while knowing that the company pension is about to go bust. I'm putting you on warning. This can't go on anymore.
One possible route to redemption may lie in honouring a pensions promise he made to MPs 4 months ago.
It's resolvable, sortable, we will sort it.
Sir Philip Green was watching today, and I understand a new attempt at a pension settlement is imminent. But at this stage, cash may save his knighthood, but not his reputation. Simon Jack, BBC News.
So let's have a brief look at some of the day's other news stories. The Scottish Government has published its consultation on a draft bill on a second independence referendum. The move doesn't guarantee another referendum, but First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said that Scotland should be ready to hold a vote if it's in Scotland's interests. The European Space Agency says it still doesn't know what happened to a robotic probe which was due to land on Mars yesterday. Scientists say that signals from the robot were lost less than a minute before it was expected to touch down. They believe its parachute was possibly jettisoned too early. Community pharmacies in England will have their budgets cut by more than 7% over the next 2 years. Reports earlier this year suggested that 3,000 chemists could close as a result of the funding changes, but that figure has been denied by the government. Labour described the plans as short-sighted. A Royal Navy destroyer and a frigate have been sent to shadow a group of Russian warships which are passing through the North Sea and approaching British waters. The ships, including Russia's only aircraft carrier and a battlecruiser, are believed to be heading to the eastern Mediterranean. Tonight, NATO said that there was concern the vessels might launch attacks on Syria's besieged city of Aleppo. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Robbins, has the latest for us in Moscow tonight. And James, what is your reading of the situation there?
Well, the decision originally to deploy Russia's only carrier for the first time to a combat zone was taken, we believe, about 3 months ago by President Putin in the Kremlin. But the fact that this deployment is going ahead at a time when Russia says it's extending by another 24 hours its military pause in Syria, suggests to NATO and its Secretary General that actually the longer term plan may be much grimmer from the point of view of the people of Aleppo. The Secretary General suggested that Russia could be about to inflict even greater human suffering on the city. The military purpose is clear. It will give Russia far greater firepower in the region, but there's also, I'm sure, a very clear political message here too, because it's not actually necessary to send a carrier to the eastern Mediterranean to achieve that increase in firepower. It could be done with land-based aircraft. I think part of the political message that Russia wants to send is partly to Britain and to France, to Britain in particular, actually taunting the Royal Navy for not having an aircraft carrier, an operational aircraft carrier of its own, and to France and to her NATO allies saying, Russia has the will to fight in Syria, you've shown that you don't. And I think that's a powerful message President Putin wants to send out.
James, thank you very much. James Robbins there, our diplomatic correspondent, with the latest on that in Moscow. Now, thousands of gay and bisexual men who were convicted of sexual offences under laws which have since been abolished will be pardoned. Campaigners say around 65,000 men were convicted, of whom 15,000 are still alive. The government says that anyone found guilty of consensual same-sex relationships would have their names cleared, and for those still living, the offences would be removed from any criminal record checks. Our correspondent Judith Moritz has the story.
Out and proud, there's nothing to hide in Manchester's gay village, but it wasn't always this way. 50 years ago, doing this could land gay men in jail. The World War II codebreaker Alan Turing was prosecuted for gross indecency with another man. He took his own life as a result.
This memorial to Alan Turing in Manchester remembers him as the father of computer science and as a victim of prejudice. After Turing was pardoned in 2013, his family campaigned for other prosecuted gay men to be given the same treatment.
Now the so-called Turing Law will be extended to thousands of men who'll receive formal pardons. Men I spoke to in Manchester welcomed the decision.
Some of my friends that grew up back then, they had to hide away, they were made to be criminals. They weren't criminals, but they were made to feel like they were.
It wasn't nice, I imagine, to be walking down the street and not being able to hold hands. If it wasn't for those people, we wouldn't be able to do that today. So we have to remember what they went through for us.
I only came out 6 years ago.
But not all campaigners feel that pardons are enough. We introduced two of them, young activist Daniel Harris and 93-year-old George Montague.
What I'm most interested in, which pleases me, which drives me more than anything else, is the posthumous apology to all those that have gone before, all those that have died before, Alan Turing, and going back as far as Oscar Wilde.
I see a pardon as a kind of like a way forward, but it's not enough. And I completely, ask for the government to actually give an official apology and put rights to wrongs from the past.
Men eligible for pardons will have to apply through the Home Office. Alan Turing's family say they're glad other men will finally receive the same justice as him. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Manchester.
And a quick reminder that Newsnight will be on BBC Two. Here's Kirsty.
Tonight, we reveal evidence that we are rewarding the wrong head teachers with big paychecks and knighthoods, and the very best head teachers are paid the worst. Join me now on BBC Two, 11 o'clock in Scotland.
Yes, that's Newsnight with Kirsty, and here on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.